Even if you're using the best AI tools, the act of writing requires time. And in that time, you have to do such things as understand where your book's going to go, what your characters are all about, how they're going to develop or devolve. And in that span of time that it takes to write a book, whether you're writing a fictional book or a non-fictional book, thought leadership, memoir, you name it, you necessarily, if it's going to be a good book, have to develop those characters and understand them inside and out.
Welcome back to the Power and Purpose podcast. I'm Vanessa Soul, your host. Thank you so much for tuning in today and investing your time and energy into listening to today's episode. Super excited for today's guests. We have Alex Morin and Marcy Barbaro. They are co-founders of the Working Writers Co., a heart-led writing and coaching company that helps people transform their truth into impactful books and stories. Alex and Marcy, thank you so much for being here on today's show.
Thanks for having us, Vanessa. It's wonderful
Oh,
to
happy
meet
to
you in
be here.
person and participate in your great show.
Thank you. So good to have you guys here. So I love starting off each episode with my signature question. Who are you and who are you not?
Marcy, do it.
I would say that we are best friends who love stories. We love people and we love pulling out of them what they really want to say. And what we are not is inauthentic. We are never inauthentic.
What a cool answer. Holy smokes. I was thinking about taking that down a personal direction, but you've inspired me, Marcy. So I'm going to speak on behalf of our company as well. And I'm going to say that I'm going to echo your sentiments, Marcy. And I'm going to say that we are definitely authentic. We are heart-led. We are full of imagination and creativity. We love to serve people. And this is really the essence of who we are. And who we're not is a gimmick. We're not a company that's in it for self-serving purposes. We believe in collaboration and community, and we're straight shooters. So yeah, that's kind of a cool way to look at that question through the eyes of our company. I like that.
I love that. My favorite part was that you guys are not inauthentic. I love that.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Doesn't
Yeah. Yeah.
serve, it doesn't serve any of us, does it? Right?
No.
Like just be real. If you're scared, say you're scared. If you're worried, if you're in imposter syndrome as a creator, just say it. What we've discovered is once you kind of share what's going on, then people come in and they quickly want to plug the holes. They want to be like, you feel like an imposter as a writer? Well, let's read a passage that you wrote previously and see how powerful it is and how it rings true. And it's going to remind you that you can write, that you have written, which means you're going to do it again.
Mm, that's powerful. What a great reminder. What a great
Mhm.
reminder. Good. So I want to talk a little bit about your journeys up until this point a little bit. Marcy, you had a moment where you just stopped waiting to quote unquote feel ready and you began writing your truth. I would love to hear more about that.
Well, when COVID came, found myself with some time. And my brother in law was manager of a small business center in town. And I booked a virtual meeting with him. I said, okay, I got some time to grow a business and do things. And what should I do? And he said, write your book. You've always wanted to write a book. You've been a writer your whole life. I'm like, who, me? I'm going to write a book. And that really had a profound impact on me because this is something I'd always said I wanted to do, but I never felt ready. I never felt smart enough. I never felt like I had enough experience. I never felt like I had anything of value to offer. That's for other people, people who've reached pinnacles, people who have degrees, people who have 20 years experience in a position, people who get invited, right? We have to stop waiting to get invited. Create your own damn party. And so I applied the seat of the pants to the seat of the chair, which is the secret to writing. and I got to work. And I told my messy story that was very mixed up and confusing at the time. And then through the help of editors and feedback, I got some clarity. And I ended up producing a powerful little book that quite a few people have described as a warm hug, as something inspiring and beautiful. My book is called Beautiful Humans. There's Nothing Wrong with You. And that was what I wanted to say to the world. It is still the number one thing that I want to say to the world. And once I did that, now I know I don't have to wait to be invited. I don't have to wait for permission. I decide. I
Mm.
decide what I want to do, be, create. And I make mistakes and I make a fool of myself sometimes. And sometimes I also hit the sweet spot where I have something I can give to others and it inspires or moves them. And isn't that what we all want?
It's all about taking action. We get so caught up in preparing and waiting for the invitation and waiting and waiting for everything to feel perfect. But maybe the perfection happens like in your situation when you just told your messy story and you focused. I love what you said. You focused on the message that we're all human, or we're all, what was it again? We're perfect as we are, something.
Beautiful humans, there's nothing wrong with you.
There's nothing wrong with you. That was the message that needed to get out. I absolutely love that. And
Mm.
Alex, you had a moment, a catalyst moment. If you want to share a little bit about that, in 2020, what was that like, and how did that change your life?
Sure. I'm listening to Marcy speak and hearing her story of, wondering if she was enough and I'm not smart enough and I'm not good enough to write this book. I come at it from the other end of the spectrum in the sense that in my corporate career that lasted nearly 20 years, I was dripping with ego and arrogance. And I didn't realize it. Beneath that arrogance and beneath that ego was a heart and still is a heart. And I needed to find that heart. And it was through an incident in 2020 that allowed it to crack open and for me to actually see my heart. And that was when my son, my oldest son, was stabbed. And he nearly lost his life. And when the doctors told us that he would live, I had a moment of clarity, and I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that I would end my corporate career that evening or the next day. And then I told my wife so, and she had no problem with it whatsoever. And that was the beginning of the most beautiful journey of my life and easily the most challenging journey of my life, beginning to see myself for who I really am. And it led to all kinds of unbelievable other journeys that were equally as challenging and maybe even more so. And here I am today, seeing myself, holding grace for myself, um, appreciating life, and I'm much healthier. I'm much happier. I and I'm so excited about what the future has in store as well because the trajectory is just so beautiful. So
Mm.
yeah, that incident in 2020 absolutely changed my life, Vanessa, and I'm thankful that it happened. I've said this before that when my son nearly died, my ego died, and it was killed in that moment with a stab wound. And it's just remarkable how that's all turned out for me and for my family and really my community and everyone around me.
Wow, what a powerful story, with a silver lining there, that you were able to drop that ego and just go through, a very personal transformation that you're grateful for today.
And
And
interestingly, Vanessa, I will jump in just for 2 seconds because it's funny, like, we talk about dropping the ego, but it necessarily exists in the physical plane, right? So the ego is the identity, is the construct, and so it's you're right in the sense that I did drop that ego, but one replaces it, right? And it's the
yes.
careful curation of that ego that really determines where you're going to go in life, and so there's a different identity today, and of course there's still an ego, but it's one that I'm comfortable looking at in the mirror now.
I love that. Thank you for adding that in.
Mm.
Funny enough, I describe the ego as an iPhone update. So when I'm talking to my friends or people that know me really well, and same thing, I think that there's always a higher expression or a more aware version of the ego, maybe one that's less guarded or less mean or less angry or whatever it might be. But we kind of upgrade the ego as we grow and learn about life. So I love that you said that. So my question is, is writing a catalyst for transformation? And if so, why and maybe how?
You just unlocked our business, Vanessa, right there in that one word, transformation. Alex and I are not trained psychologists. We didn't go into this business. We went into this business to help people write books. But every single author that we have worked with, and they generally work with us for 6 months. Sometimes people extend to 8 months. We have one writer who worked with us for a year, and that was probably the biggest transformation that we witnessed. But who they are, or who they think they are at the beginning of the writing process, is very different from the person they become. And we hold space for all that healing, and we know that therapeutic journaling is a thing. This is actually, a healing modality, therapeutic journaling, that is recognized in the field of psychology and psychiatry. But little old us, like, we're like, hey, we want to help people write books. We're editors, we're book coaches, we're not psychologists. We see it as people put their stories down on page, and then we ask them questions. Oh, I see you're pursuing themes of abandonment in your book, or your main character is going through an identity shift. What does that mean? What does that feel like? As we ask these questions and draw this book manuscript out of the people, they change and they heal, and we're humbled by it every single time, to have just had a little role in that process of that person having more self-knowledge, more internal peace, more joy.
And think about it from this perspective, Vanessa. When you write a book, the act of writing a book necessarily takes a certain amount of time, right? A book can't be written in 2 minutes, a 150-page book. And so if you think about it, using AI tools, you can write a book a lot faster these days. Nevertheless, even if you're using the best AI tools, the act of writing requires time. And in that time, you have to do such things as understand where your book's going to go, what your characters are all about, how they're going to develop or devolve. And in that span of time that it takes to write a book, whether you're writing a fictional book or a non-fictional book, thought leadership, memoir, you name it, you necessarily, if it's going to be a good book, have to develop those characters and understand them inside and out. And so this is why it's somewhat contradictory, and a lot of people don't necessarily understand this point. Even when you're writing fiction, the scrutiny that an author puts on their characters requires them to understand those characters to a degree that has the ability to transform them. Isn't that wild? So no matter what you're writing, if you do it well, if it's just like, whatever, I'm getting it out for the sake of getting it out, I really don't care, and then that's a different story. But that's not our tutelage. Our tutelage is all about examining the complexity of characters, settings, situations, emotions, all of those things. And in that study that happens within a 6-month period from your idea to manuscript, the development and the transformation are unbelievable. Unbelievable. Everyone we've
Wow.
ever worked with, everybody.
That is so amazing because, I never personally thought that the writer was going through a transformation. I obviously figured the readers were going through a transformation because the writer was taking us on a journey. And I used to read a lot of Paulo Coelho books, and after every Paulo Coelho book, I was like, "Whoa, I'm transformed." I have a different belief about life or something like that. But I love that we're talking about the writer going through this transformation, and especially through the characters because it requires so much attention and diligence and thoroughness. I think what you're saying. So
I would
interesting.
argue that the more an author can insert their wisdom, experience, knowledge, curiosity, imagination into their work, then the more the reader is going to feel what you felt after you
Mhm.
finish those books. Oh my gosh, like holy smokes, right? So those two are tied together intimately. You put your energy into a song, and that song has the ability to make it big in the public domain because your energy lives in it, right? But if you just write it for the money and you like, ah, well, whatever, it was me and my buddy were drunk and we wrote this song, there's less likelihood that it'll resonate. And so there's a relationship between energy in and energy out. And that's something else that we found in the writing process.
And then what about people focusing on like the end result? How does that work? Is that the right way to think about writing a book where they're like, I just want to be the New York best time seller, or I just want people to feel this at the end, or is it more about this transformation that we're talking about, like enjoying the journey and less about the end? What do you think?
As book coaches, we always start with the end in mind. When people come to write a book with us, we're like, why do you want to write a book? I want to tell my story, share my legacy with my family. I want to have a business tool. I always say that the word author is the root of the word authority, right? So if you want to be recognized as an authority in your field, you need a book. So we always start with the end in mind. Now everybody wants to be a New York Times or Washington Post bestseller, whatever, and it's pretty easy to achieve Amazon bestseller status. But that's kind of empty promises, empty ego. But really creating a transformation, creating a movement, having material that is going to move the needle in your business, or have you recognized as an authority in your field, have an impact. These are these are valuable reasons for writing a book. So anytime when we start with a client, we always start with the why. Do you want to write a book? Why now? What are you going to give up in order to get your book written? That's really important because it does take time and energy. And then last piece, what do you want to say? What do you want to say? What do you want to say? So you've nailed it. We definitely have to start with the end in mind, and then we reverse engineer the book.
And I just these are such fascinating topics. They're so rich with possibility, and I want to riff off that for a couple of seconds and talk about a lesson that we taught last night. So last night was Tuesday evenings. We teach on Tuesday evenings to our authors, and last night we were teaching the art of a wonderful ending. How do you end your book? And that's a question that few people ask themselves, including authors. They understand their story generally. This is what I want to write about, and this is the journey, and this is what I'm going to do, and it kind of ends like this. But there are so many components to the end that you need to think about in order for it to be a whole work of art. And what I'm specifically talking about is you need to have a thread that follows from the beginning of that arc. And as the character develops or devolves, we need to see that. We need to understand that so that at the end of the book, you tie it all together and you see that tremendous development and you understand it emotionally and you understand it intellectually. So it's an interesting question that you asked. Like, do people have the end in mind? And I want to just share a really quick story with you about going to Canada's Wonderland. So, Vanessa, Canada's Wonderland is like Disneyland here in Canada, just outside of Toronto. And I went on Monday with my youngest child and my wife. And if you'd have asked me on Sunday, Alex, how do you want your day to end tomorrow? I would have kind of looked at you like you were an alien. I would have been like, Vanessa, what the hell are you talking about? Like, how do I want my day to end? And then you would have said, put some thought into that, Alex. How do you want your day to end? And if you forced me, I would have said, well, I don't know. I don't want to fall off the roller coaster. So I guess I want my day to end in one piece. I don't want to be scarred, right? And you'd be like, okay, all right, that's fair. What else, Alex? How would you like your day to end? And I might say, I don't know. I go to sleep. And then if you were an amazing book coach, you would say, no, 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 Alex, not nearly enough detail. How does your day really fucking end? And now I'm like, well, hang on a sec. She's really challenging me. And I go, okay, all right, Vanessa, you want to play that game? Here's how I want my day to end. I want to drive home and I want our son to have had such an unbelievable day that he sits in bed and then just goes bonk and he crashes. And he is so thrilled with how the day went. And I want to understand that this little kid, this 10-year-old, had fears as he walked into the park. And he dealt with those fears and he understood them. And he brought up the courage to be able to get on that ride and ride that loop and then get off it and feel like he's accomplished something. And you know what? After that head hits the pillow, I want to go outside. I want to look up at the stars with my wife next to me. And I want to light the fire from our fire pit. And then I want to go to bed and I want to make love for an hour. And you're like, okay, Alex, now you're fucking talking. That is the end of a story, right? But do you see how little effort people put into the end of a story? People are like, well, it's the end of the story. Like I did it. I made the $1 million. I built the business. But no, dude, that's not the end of your story. What do you really want in life? Because you know what I really want? I want love. I want growth. I want experience. So is that not like, can you not draw from that? Can you not figure out that if you create an unbelievable ending, and I challenge the heck out of you to write that ending, you're going to benefit in life. You're going to be able to take that skill of writing your ending and apply that to tomorrow, and apply that to the end of your business week, and apply that to the end of your year, and actually deliberately create unbelievable endings that are new beginnings. Because that's what happened in last night's course, is that we talked about the end is the beginning. You want your readers to be so fascinated that they want to pick up your next book, that they're interested and they want to pick up where you left off and take those emotions, take what they've learned and build it and work on it inside. So that really relates to your question about endings. And it's so serendipitous that you ask this question, and it's what we taught last night. How interesting.
Yeah. What a great example, by the way. Like I was
Mm.
literally on the journey with you
Right,
with that
right.
very descriptive ending. And yes, such a big difference. And wow, it's powerful stuff, and this is such a beautiful art. I almost forget because again, I'm on the reader side most of the time. But it's such a beautiful art, and I love that you brought that example from your guys' class. Now, I want to touch on some of the fears that people might have about this process. What are some common fears or resistances that people have about writing, whether it's getting started or finishing or just the process in either stage?
Everyone thinks that they're not good enough, right? Unless your high school teacher told you you were great in English, almost everyone who comes to us and says, well, I really can't write. And we haven't found that to be much of an obstacle. I'll be honest with you. One of our writers was like, hey, I've been 30 years in the banking industry. All I've done is send point form emails. I don't even know if I can write a sentence. He ended up writing a beautiful book about his childhood and his journey and who he became today. And, we have other people who dictate into their phones and then play that back, and we'll even use AI to clean it up before they send it along to us and fix their punctuation. So I think we all have to get over the fact that we didn't need to do well in writing. We didn't need to do well in English class. One of the greatest gifts we have as human beings is sharing our experiences through story. And you can share story through music, through painting, through architecture. You can through cooking. There's so many ways to share a story. So with us, we always just want the author to focus on the story. And so you've really got to get out of your head quickly. So when you start to work with us, Vanessa, and you sign up for 6 months to write a book with us, we meet with you in the first couple of days, and within 48 hours, you must produce writing. It's like, go, just write something, because we will not allow that new writer working with us to dwell in a space of fear. Produce. And we're extremely loving and non-judgmental. We also have very high standards. So we're going to work with you wherever you're at. And we have to listen to and respect your individual voice, because not every writer is going to sound the same. And thank goodness, right? The playlist in your car is different than the one I have. right? Different voices resonate with us. And so as a writer, write in your own voice and you're going to resonate with someone, right? So just relax. So I'm going to pass it over to Alex now, but because I've been a lifelong writer comes very easily to me, always has. People are like, I'm nervous around you. You know, I'm not a person who often gets invited to join a book club because they're like, Marcy knows writing so well and she's such a good writer. We don't want her here because what if I didn't see what she saw in the book? Who cares? Right? Who cares? So really, we want to tackle that fear, that imposter syndrome, the who am I? I don't have the skills. My grammar's terrible. My spelling's terrible. Nobody cares. We have tools to clean up all that stuff now. You also have two editors who are not going to allow you to be embarrassed. So tell your story, because storytelling is the art here. Storytelling is the craft here. And that's what you're coming here to do. And everything else is just incidental. You know, you find your voice, tell your pure story, get it out. So that's probably the number one fear that we encounter. Alex, what else do people fear?
Um, they fear all kinds of things. I think it's only natural to fear. I fear, you fear, we all fear. Like that's the human experience. Fear is something that's talking to us. It's a message that's being revealed to us. And so, I think what one of the things that's unique about our program, I think it's unique anyways. I haven't had the chance to investigate too many other book coaches, but we used to feel that we were developmental editors, right? This is what we do. We developmentally edit people's writing, meaning that we look at it, see it from a big picture perspective, find the themes, stitch those together, create arc, all of that stuff. But we've come to realize that we're much more than developmental editors. We are book coaches. And if you take the book part out of it and just say you're coaches, there's a truth to that as well. So now when we get into fear, instead of, coaching a session on writer's block, we're coaching a session on fear. What is fear? Well, fear might be one of the greatest motivators that you've ever encountered. Oh, tell me more about that, Marcy. And then Marcy's like, well, let's examine a fear. Someone throw out a fear. What are you fearful of? And someone says, well, I'm fearful of getting in a car. Why? Well, I was in an accident 6 months. And so you end up working through that whole idea of fear, and then you end up seeing it through a different lens. And you say, this is where my block is. And so when you realize that, let's just say in a writing perspective, you say, I'm blocked here because of this. I've seen it now. I've worked through this. Then
Mhm.
you unblock, you become creative again. And like I said earlier, you take that skill and you apply it somewhere else in your life. And I'd say, Marcy, hey, like almost every lesson we coach, we tell our writers, there's a master key in that lesson. It's not just for writing. Take that and use that in your relationship tomorrow. And more often than not, people will come back and go, yeah, that was a really good lesson. That transcended writing. That was pretty cool. So I think that's one of the things that makes us unique is that we see different things. We're open to seeing different things, and we're humble. We've made the mistakes. Fuck, I've made so many mistakes in my life. So look, I'm human. I can generally understand where you're coming from. If you tell me any story, I can find the universality in it. And that's another skill that you have to have as a book coach, is to see the universality in all things. Last thing I'll say on that topic is we have a catchphrase that we put on one of our workbooks, and it says something to the effect of, every story has been told except yours. Right. And it's just the universality of fear, the universality of triumph, the universality of love, the universality of adversity, the universality of reconciliation, whatever it is, however you tell the story, I got you. I understand. It's part of the human, it's part of our human knowledge to understand those feelings. So we can work with fear. We like fear.
Yeah. Oh, this is so inspiring. Once upon a time, I started a book, didn't get far. But you know what came up for me, and hopefully you guys can address these two other fears or roadblocks or challenges that most people might experience. What comes to mind for me is I think I was overwhelmed probably because from my own story, or I don't know, maybe I felt like I couldn't get it out fast enough. I can't remember what the thing was. And then I'll give you both of these. You can riff off of both of these. The second one was, wanting it to be perfect. And I guess that does tie in with what Marcy started to say already about not being enough. But if you guys want to expand on that too, that would be helpful.
You know, we don't sell. Our business model is not to sell. We led off this conversation today talking about a heart-based business. And one of the things about a heart-based business is you do it because you love it. And you partner with people who have a desire that is wrapped in love. And so when somebody wants to write a book, that's obvious to two book nerds like me and Marcy, right? Like we get it. We see you. We see you. You want to write the book. Okay. Now you determine and we determine together if we're the right fit. You like our energy, we like your energy. Like do we have commonalities? Can we see this story? That all makes a difference. And so that's not a sale. That's alignment, right? And I think that's part of the new age economy is that you don't sell for the sake of money, you align. And in that alignment comes abundance. And abundance can be money, or it can be someone saying, why don't you use my cottage for a week? Or it can be whatever that happens to be. And so to get back to this idea of readiness, oftentimes we encounter people who are simply not ready. And we could use old school sales tactics and we could push them closer to being ready. And we could use all the right phraseology to get them there and to actually admit that they're ready to do this. But that wouldn't be fair and that wouldn't be honest. So we simply erase the veil and we ask them, are you ready to write the book? And if the answer is no, then that's okay. We're here. We will be here. We love what we do. In 2 years and 3 years, we'll still own this company and our company will be thriving. And if you want to join us, then go for it. Join us then. So I would say to you, you weren't ready. You weren't ready to write the book. And that's totally cool. I wasn't ready to be in a committed relationship at one point in my life. I wasn't ready to do this. I wasn't ready to do that. Today, I know what I'm ready for. Right. And knowing when you're ready allows you to identify when other people are ready as well. You understand that vibe. You're like, okay, that person's ready to write the book. And there's a slight distinction between readiness and fear, right? So fear can get in the way of readiness. You might be ready, but it's the fear. You got to work with that first, and then all of a sudden that barrier's gone, and it's like, whoa, I'm ready. So I hope that gives you a little insight into readiness, that we encounter that quite often when we're prospecting and speaking with new connections. Marcy, back to you.
The other thing that happens, Vanessa, quite often is a writer will be going great guns on their work, producing a ton of material, and then all of a sudden they'll disappear. They'll stop writing. And we come back to them and say, okay, what's going on? Now that I've got this much written, I'm afraid to expose myself. I'm afraid to finish the book. Because if I finish the book, that means we're going to slap a cover on it and it's now going to be out in the world. And if it's out in the world, then people are going to see me. And people will often write about their traumas or things they've gone through, something they've overcome. And they're not always presented in the most favorable light because we are human. Coming back to that again. And so then we've got to work that through with the writer as to what is your greatest fear? What are you thinking can happen here? Oh, I'm afraid that I'm going to upset my family, or I'm spilling family secrets, or I'm afraid that someone's going to sue me for slander. So we will look at things and say, okay, if you're, right off the bat, if you're identifying a crime or poor behavior in a corporate setting, we have to change all the identifying factors, right? So that you can protect yourself. That's just smart writing. So those are things we do to protect the author. As it comes back to the author, that sense of trust in your book editors, in your book coaches. We've got you. We're not going to let you make a fool of yourself. This has happened where a writer was sharing about sexual abuse that occurred, and she was very explicit. And I felt that she was too explicit. And I came back to her and I said, you don't have to lay yourself open. We can write about sexual abuse or something of that nature without being as graphic. We can show what is implied by reaction, by body language, by things like we can skip over some of that ugliness so that you can maintain your dignity, so that you don't feel that everybody who knows you, your clients, your friends, your family, your coworkers, the people you play pickleball with, they're not all going to know your ugliest moment. We can imply that it has happened, but let's save a little bit for yourself. So we never want the writer to get past that point of losing their dignity. And that's another thing that we do as editors. And for me, I have a great, because I have an honors degree in literature, like Alex does, we've read so many books in our lives, and we're so familiar with literature and fiction, common fiction, memoir. I have a radar that goes off. When I read something and I feel like I'm going to throw up, I'm like, okay, too much. How can we tell this story better? So that's something we do. And we would get on a call. We get on private calls with our writers once a week. And I'll say to you, I want to address this scene that you've written. I really appreciate you being so open and vulnerable. And I think it's an important element of your story. And if you want to keep it in, would you allow us to make some suggestions about how it can be written in a way that allows you to have a little more privacy and remain a little bit more intact? And then we go from there. So we're trying to deal with the fears as they come up, right?
Yeah.
And I think this kind of conversation, this level of conversation that we're having right now, Vanessa, is very indicative of the type of conversation that we have with our writers all the time.
And I love that protective element that you provide. And that's the benefit of having an editor and a book coach is, the person doesn't have to figure it all out because they can't figure out all the sides, right? Like they tell their story. Yes, they might have every single detail. And then they have someone like you to kind of like guide them and monitor that. So that
What's
way
your saying, Marcy, about the bowling? You've got a bowling saying, don't you?
Oh, I always say that Alex and I are the bumpers at the bowling alley. Like, when you go to like a kid's birthday party and they put the bumpers up so that the balls don't go in the gutter.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Alex and I are. We're the bumpers at the
You're the
bowling alley.
bumpers.
So yeah. So
Yeah,
that's great
I love that.
visual.
And I was just tying that in, like that actually, that reduces a lot of the heaviness or the pressure or the fears that people might go through. Because I'm sure it's a daunting process, to disclose, your life or create stories or whatever it is. Yeah, having you guys as the bumpers, like that's part of the process that actually makes it more accessible and people can still get the book done. you know you know
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you have that trust, then we really are attacking the fear. I'm not saying we're watering down every book so
Sure.
that it's, we still want some of that poignancy, some of that
Yeah,
shock
it's
element.
discernment.
Yes,
Yeah, that's a
discernment.
good word.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a good word. I love that. That's 100% what it is.
Yeah, I relate because on my healing journey, again, I never really published a book or anything, but on my healing journey, like right when I started to kind of like be open, I was in communities and sharing about what I went through. It's like the floodgates were open. It was just like oversharing, and I'm not saying that was wrong. It was probably right for the time, but
Yeah.
over time, I realized how to have more discernment, maybe for protective reasons, and then other reasons it just wasn't necessary. So, but my story was still getting heard, or I was still sharing, or I was still connecting with people. People were still relating to what I had been through. So totally get it. And I love that you guys brought that up. What are some other benefits, maybe two, three, four, doesn't matter how many, what are some other benefits that people really receive from working with editors and book coaches?
I think accountability for sure, that you're going to keep writing. You're going to finish the damn book already. You paid good money to work with us, and we want to produce the very best quality. But sometimes writers need a push when they have meetings, when we're in their manuscript editing and we're filling it with edits and questions, then they get excited like, "Ooh, I got work to do. I've got feedback." And oftentimes we'll say, "Hey, like Alex and I we will meet outside of meetings with our writers. So Alex and I met around this one gentleman's book this morning, and there's 2 or 3 places that it was a little confusing for me. And then we have a conversation about how are we going to approach that writer to fix those confusing parts. And we always come with suggestions as well, right? And so the story has to make sense. You have to have a valuable reader experience, right? So we are your coaches, but we're also the reader, right? So you might be telling your story, it's all in your head, but you're not laying it all out for me. So I'm confused because there's parts of the story missing. So I'm also the reader, where I go, as a reader, Vanessa, I don't know how you got from A to B to C. And you're like, right, I forgot to put this in. So there's accountability, making sure that your story has continuity, that it follows a narrative arc, which is what every reader is used to and expecting, is to follow a narrative arc. And so we make sure that's in there. Yeah, Alex, what else? What, I don't know. Why do people work the same?
I can think of a couple of things at least, and one of them is community. So
Mm-hmm.
we have just a wonderful community of authors who are aligned in their heart-centeredness and want to create an impactful and resonant work of art. And in our community setting, we coach on Tuesday evenings. We have readings on Thursday afternoons. Our group gets to know one another really well. And if you're starting at around the same time another author's starting, you're with them for 6 months. And on Thursdays in particular, where one author gets an opportunity to read, say, a chapter or a section of their book and get feedback from everybody else, the whole community really gets a sense of what they're working on. And they open themselves up like with tremendous vulnerability and read that unfinished section. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, like, first of all, like, I'm sorry you went through that. Second of all, this was riveting, but I want to know more about this and I want to know more about that. And so it inspires all kinds of creative action around it through community, through interaction. And what we find is that many of our authors, if not all of them, end up developing relationships amongst the community that last a lifetime. So they're still talking to this day, 2 years after they've written their first book. They're still best pals and seeing one another. And so that's something else that comes from our business is community. And the other thing I would say is the ironically, or maybe not so ironically, the development of relationships. And this relates to community, but I mean it within the family. I can't think of a single instance in which a writer hasn't finished a book and their partner or their family in some way, shape, or form hasn't read their book and understood them at a deeper level. So when I was talking about the the focus and the energy it requires to write an amazing book and to develop your characters and yourself, if you're the main character in the book, you discover things about yourself that were elusive before. And when you articulate that through the written word and your partner reads that, or your family reads that, or your close friends read that, they see you in a way that you've likely never been seen before. And that always results in closer bonds. And that's an amazing thing for us to behold and to witness, be part of. So there's lots of things that come as the
Yeah.
result of
You
this
know what I was going
business.
to say
Those are two great
too?
ones.
Sorry to cut you off, Alex.
Yeah,
The other thing is our knowledge of the industry, right?
Yes.
Like, so if let's say you're a business person and you're writing a book that you're going to use as a tool in your business. Well, we happen to know someone who will take your book and turn it into a digital course
right.
that can be used on an iPad or a laptop while you're delivering speaking. If you want to become a speaker, then we connect you with our friends at the Speaking Bureau. If you want to do an audiobook, we can hook you up with our friends who do audiobooks, and we talk about marketing. So it's not just the editing and the discussion of your book, it's the whole thing. What are we doing with it? What do you want? We bounce cover designs back and forth. We don't design the covers, but when they go to cover design, they always send us the covers. Marcy, Alex, you know us best. Help me write the back cover copy blurb. I want to send a few chapters of my book out in order to get an endorsement or to ask someone to write the foreword of my book. We'll help get that together, write a synopsis of what they hope to achieve with the book, to send that along to someone that we're asking them, would you kindly commit to writing the foreword? And that would often be someone with a little bit of celebrity or cachet in the industry or the area they're writing about, because that brings a lot of value back to the book. So really, we understand what makes a book successful. So when you work with us, we're not just always talking about writing. We're talking about this book is actually a product. And how are we going to make this product successful? And so that's all part of what you learn with us.
I love it. Thank you for that. Oh, so good. I think I'm re-inspired. I'm ready.
Hey,
That book
Vanessa,
that I once created 3 years ago that hasn't seen the light of day yet.
there's probably still some nuggets in there, despite the fact that you've evolved so much. But you are exactly the type of person that we work with, someone very open-hearted, mindful, soulful, on a constant, like a lifelong learner. This is our, this is our kind of person. So, you know what, dust it off. You may find a few nuggets and then reach out to us. We'd love
Yeah,
to.
absolutely. And then what are some practical tools or tips or next steps for someone like me, whether they've started the book or been thinking about it or whatever it is? They're past, they know they have a story to tell. So they don't need to be convinced that they have a story to tell, whether it's fiction or their life. But what would be like a practical next step? Is it maybe just review what they've already written? Is it something else?
Talk, talk. That's the next step, right? Ideas are necessary before manifestation happens, right? Before creation happens. You have to actually have an idea, hold on to that idea long enough to actually bring it into form. And so the next step is always to talk and to examine the ideas that are moving back and forth. And if you feel like you're in a trusted environment, like a discussion with me and Marcy, then you're going to have a freedom to see those ideas and actually watch them as they go by and then pick the ones that resonate the most. And for people who are thinking about writing a book, our hope is that they meet with us, and if it aligns and it's the right time, they see an idea and they go, "Oh, I've never really thought about this plus this equals that." And if that's what you articulate as your vision, then we're going to hold that vision with you. So you're not going to be solely responsible for doing that. We're going to get you to this point. And that is a massive win for everybody. Your success is our success. You writing a best-selling book is amazing for our business. And so that's what we want. But you articulate what that looks like based on talk, based on ideas that are floating back and forth. And when we all settle on an idea, then we bring that into form. And the rest is just so simple, right? It just all happens. So you ask what the next step is, the evaluation of ideas. That's what it is. And that normally happens through discussion and communication.
Yeah, we're pretty accessible. You can just go onto our website, workingwritersco.com,
Yeah.
workingwritersco.com. And there's all kinds of book now buttons all over the place. And, we also send out our Calendly link. Just book in with us for 30 minutes and we'll jam and we'll talk about it. And if 30 minutes isn't enough, book another call and figure out if you are ready. And also, it's very common for people to come to us with 2 or 3 book ideas. And then through the discussion, we really get to the heart of what you really want to do, where your jumping off point is. And last thing I want to say, Vanessa, is your book idea may morph during the process. So don't fall apart. If that's going to happen, we've seen it happen, and it's okay. We can do it, and it's not like everything you've written is lost. No, it gets tweaked a bit. So yeah, Alex is right that we have to talk it through, talk those ideas out loud, and then determine the path to take. Again, in a non-pressure environment, we know how to sell. We don't believe in selling, because writing a book this is a huge commitment and creative endeavor. And so we don't want to trick somebody into doing it, manipulate somebody into doing it.
And hey,
Yeah.
Marcy, we've had clients who have simply not been ready. Like the ideas were interesting to them, and they've recognized their boundaries. My bandwidth is stretched here,
Yeah.
and this is my priority. And then I would like to get to the book, and we say that's great. Like as long as you feel really good about your priority, then that's perfect. But if you continue to feel the push and the urge, maybe you evaluate your priorities. Maybe you look at those, right? And so we've had people come back to us 6 months later, a year and a half later, and say, "I'm ready now. Like, let's do this." And it's interesting. We have 3 flagship programs. We've got an executive program for people who are really busy, and we actually help them write the book. It's not exactly ghostwriting, but we do most of the writing. We use some AI tools to help us with outlining, ideation, but largely we write the book by interviewing the client. And so it is their story. They are the author. We're not the ones who came up with the idea. They are. They're the ones who give us the main points, and we draw the themes out of them and then write the book. That's called the executive program. And we have a program called Cover to Cover, and that's also 6 months where they do all the writing, and there's coaching and all. It's the full enchilada. You get everything. But what I want to get to is we've got this program called Create and Community. And I don't even know what the price is. I think it's $200 a month. Maybe it's 150. I
Yeah.
think it's 200.
No, it's 200.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that. Anyways, it's $200 a month, which is such well, I won't say that categorically. It's for me, it's an insignificant investment, but it's palatable for most people. $200 a month, and that's a real opportunity just to feel the flavor of the group, of the dynamic of what you might get out of working with Marcy and Alex. And what most often happens is people will start in that Create and Community program, spend 2 months with us, and then they'll say, I want to upgrade. Like, any chance you would allow me to invest what I invested into and we're like, yeah, take that money and we'll put it towards it, right? So this is also another step in the readiness is investigate. Like you wouldn't buy a car without test driving it, right? Like, so why wouldn't you come in and see what a couple of lessons are like? And even if you want to do that at no charge, come in and see what a couple of lessons. We don't care. Sure. Like, we'd love to have you to feel it out and then join Create Community and then upgrade if you want to do that. So there's never any pressure. We love what we do. We've got lots of offerings because we've really thought through the journey of the writer. What happens if they're not quite ready? What if they think they're ready? Well, then start here. What if they're totally ready? Okay, start here. What if they have no time? Okay, here's the program for you. So of course, we're going to figure out more things in the future, but I think we've done a pretty good job of honing in on our offerings right now and being able to cater to the different obstacles that we come up with on a daily basis.
Yeah. I love the different programs, like, because time is a big constraint for most of us.
Yeah.
But it still shouldn't be an excuse. So it sounds like you guys have it all together. You thought of everything. Thank you so much for this conversation. It was so inspiring and insightful as well, very informative. I'm going to drop your website link. I'll say it here for the listeners. It's also in the episode description box. And then right after I give the links again, if I can get one powerful quote from each of you, that would be great. And then we'll end on that note. So for their website, it's workingwritersco.com. And then also just jump below in the description. You will also see their Instagram link and their Facebook link. And then one powerful quote from each of you.
You have a story, period.
And I would say you're good enough right now.
I love that. Full circle. That's what we started off with.
Yes, 100%. Never gets old. Vanessa, you're a real treat, and we wish you every bit of success with this podcast.
Thank you
I'd
so
like to
much.
echo that as well. It's been lovely spending time with you, Vanessa. Your energy is beautiful. Thank you for giving us this space and for allowing this discussion to unfold in any which direction. It's been really, really exciting.
Yes, it's been an honor. You're welcome. And thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Namaste and have a great day.